Hello, listeners of the Artversations podcast. Welcome back to another episode of Artversations, a meditative conversation about the artistic process. Each episode, an artist will sit down with me, Brie, like the cheese, to reflect on projects that are in the making or have been made in the past. Do you need a little inspiration to make the art you really want to make? I'm so glad you're joining me because this is the place. Don't forget to answer the question on Spotify and join the community. While you're there, give the podcast a little follow. Other podcast platforms also have that wonderful follow button too, so push away to your desire, and then you'll never miss out on new episodes. Ooh. All right, you're not dreaming. The mystical, phantasmagorical Audrianna Martin Del Campo is here. Audrianna, or Audrey as I've come to know, is a dance artist and photographer currently based in Tkarón. You'll hear about Audrey's passion for crafting work, rich with surrealism, mysticism, and elemental influences. And we even get into talking about sheep. It was a fulfilling chat, truly. Without further ado, join me for the next hour, and let's hear from Audrianna Martin Del Campo.
So all these females get moved onto a barge, like over to this little island that's just off the mainland with like a few kind of.
I'm getting right now.
Yeah, I know, it's so crazy. Like I'm just like, this is amazing that I have friends that I'm able to have this experience with. But you can really read between the lines of a text or be like, someone can. Oh, can you do this for me later? And they're like, yeah, sure. And you're like, oh God, did I say something? It's just like, why? Like, no, it's just easier. Let's just cut to the chase.
Yes.
It is nice too. You can hear the excitement, the energy in people's voice, even just you with the background noise of like this stop, young Dunda, or wherever you were at. It's just like, oh, I love that. Like, I get such, I'm immersed into where you are in this space and what's going on in your life. And it just feels like I'm getting a little snippet into like, something curated just like as a response back to me, which is really nice.
Agree. Yeah, it is really nice.
Voice notes forever.
Voice notes forever.
That can be my like quoted.
Yeah, just
voice
that.
Voice notes, yeah, like
just
advocate.
That one statement.
Yeah.
I love that. Are you good to go?
Yep, good to go.
I feel like we could just jump right into it. Hi, Audrianna.
Sounds good. Hi.
Audrianna.
Audrey's okay.
Audrey?
Yeah. Same for you, Brianna.
Bree's great.
Brie, yeah. Brie and Audrey.
I know. Well, I'm also a fellow like Anna person.
I was just about to say, yeah, we both have the Anna that we're like, no, we'll just drop it and have little Reese at the end.
Exactly. The I at the end.
Yeah.
When did that start coming up for you?
Just my name is very long, Audrianna Martin Del Campo, and it's always like smushed together like when I was in school and stuff, like always just one condensed name. And then just some people are like when you're younger and you had like different choreographers. If you're going to the States, I feel like in the States it's like Adriana or like they just
always
Brianna, like just weird ways of pronouncing it.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, or like Audrey, and I'm like, I didn't think my name was that hard to understand, but I'm just like, Audrey's easier.
Totally.
And I've like always loved Audrey Hepburn growing up. Like she like so much so like, so I was just like, oh no, I like going by Audrey. It feels like right. So
yes,
that it's stuck. It's easier. Yeah. I have so many nicknames, but Audrey feels like the most. What about for yourself though?
It's the same for me. It was always like Brianna, Brianna, like constantly just like different variations. Yeah. Very much in the States as well. Yeah. Around here, I feel like in Ontario, it's a little bit of more of a common name. I had like 3 Briannas in my class growing up.
Oh, okay.
But then I think when I moved to Toronto, I was like, okay, I feel like I need like a new name or just like a new.
I need to like reinvent myself a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not to like let go of Brianna, but course. Like Brie for me just feels more about like who I am. Like I'm kind of like the cheese. Like I'm very like, different of like my little like sense of humor. I'm trying to like play up that more. So it's become like a stage name, but also who I actually am.
Yeah. No, it really does suit you. I like it.
Thank you.
I was going to ask you too, like Brie like the cheese, because you do say that sometimes. I'm like, is Brie your cheese of choice?
It really is.
Yeah,
I really love
awesome.
I like a nice baked Brie that's like like oozing out of the shell, and then you just dip a little cracker in.
Exactly.
Oh, we'll have to have some later.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be on the Artversations podcast. Thank you so much. I was telling to the listeners hearing, telling Brie before that, I have listened to a lot of the podcasts, so I'm really happy to finally be on and get a chance to talk with you one-on-one. There's been such a gap between when we've like really connected or been seeing each other. Yeah. We briefly met up a bit earlier this year. Mm-hmm. So I just was like, the conversation flowed so easily. It was so nice to like just reconnect. So having the chance to like sit down outside of a kind of working space is really nice.
I totally agree.
Outside of taping a tree or...
I know. We sat for like... It was probably 2 hours. It didn't feel like 2 hours.
No, it didn't. It really didn't.
But it was such a big construction of this tree for a grim night. And we had to just keep taping and
duct taping. Like very meticulously. It was like there was such a technique to it.
There really was.
But you definitely made the time go by quicker. We were just talking behind the tree, like catching up a little bit.
It felt very natural. And I was thinking about the first time that we had met, which I think was in Ottawa when you came for a competition, I believe.
Yep. Can Dance, I think.
Can Dance, in the Nepean Sportsplex. And I think I just remember having this feeling like immediately when I met you that like, this is the person I want to be around and like talk with. And I don't know if it started because I had watched your solo. I remember one of the solos that you did back then. And I just remember thinking like, who is this person? I found that you just like took your solo into your own, and I remember watching it with such like patience and like just being like, wow, like who is this? And then I think we had like a conversation briefly while we were all, like during the Diamond Dance Off or something.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And then obviously you went back to Toronto and I stayed in Ottawa, so we hadn't like connected afterwards.
Yeah, I was just kind of like through Facebook or like social media, but it's very funny. Well, thank you for saying that, because you kind of you articulated it perfectly of how my first impression of you was as well. I was just sitting in the theater and randomly, like not even to watch someone, and you were doing one of your solos. I feel like it was tap. Maybe. Yeah. But I just was like so blown away because like although I have such an appreciation for tap, it's not like my strength or my like. I wouldn't just be like, I have some time off, let me go watch some tap solos right now. Fair. But I was just like, oh my God. Like, just the way you embodied, just the command you had of the stage and just the, like, performance and the charisma, I was, like, so enamored right away. And then, just getting to know you a little bit briefly through the weekend as we were just competing and being, like, inspired by one another, just, like, what we were doing. I just knew, I was like, oh my God, this girl's so special. And then it's so nice that we're now sitting here today, all these years later.
This
really having
like
a full cycle.
8 years?
I think even longer. I feel like more like 9 or 10.
Wow.
Which is insane.
That's so beautiful that we both fell in love with each other.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too when someone had like, I was just thinking like, how did we like officially meet? Obviously in the comp world. Yes. But it's like, we both have this Nepean Sportsplex like imagery of just kind of watching each other and both like having this mutual respect and like curiosity. So
absolutely. That's so funny.
And here we are now.
I'm really grateful to get the chance to pick your brain. I feel like you're one of those artists that is so multidisciplinary, multi-talented. Like I feel like you're not just like a photographer, just a dancer, just a mover. Like you use everything in your art. Yeah. And I'm really excited to like hear about how those intersectionalities work.
Yeah, well, thank you so much.
Is that like a conscious decision for you?
Yeah, it definitely was. I don't know when it came about. Mm-hmm. I mean, photography has kind of always been in my life. Like my parents have always had such like a desire to really like capture memories from like being very young. So that like definitely influenced me early on. Like I remember being a kid and my mom waking us up at like sunrise wearing these like matching little white dresses in like a field of Queen Anne's lace because she wanted to get like a photo of us. Like they've always had this eye for like these kind of like compositions and like ideas. Like they both like had that. So that definitely inspired me at like a really early age to just be like, anything goes, like kind of thing. And just, they're always so down for like, let's do crazy family photos. And like, my dad's going to wear makeup and a top hat or just because like they're very like love to get involved in that kind of stuff, which I'm very fortunate about. Mm-hmm. And also just having access to like borrowing my dad's kind of little point and shoot if I wanted to. But obviously like dance was the focus, being like obviously a comp dancer too. Like it just takes up so much of your life. Like it is your life. Truly. So that was never like a thing. I mean, I took photography in high school, but I remember, I think it was for maybe one of our nationals, and you have to send in like a little headshot because it's in like the program.
Right.
And I was like, oh, Dad, like I need to like take a headshot. And he's like, oh, well, there's a camera downstairs. There's a tripod. Like just, you can figure out how to do it. And I was like, oh, okay. And I think it took me like 2 hours to just get like one probably like bad shot of me smiling. But the whole process of doing it and just setting it up and taking the time and like figuring this whole thing out, learning how to do it all was so intriguing. And I think from that moment on, it like, I really became interested in photography, especially like, well, and through the pandemic quarantine as well, like just self-portraits as well. Yeah. But yeah, the shift, I didn't like that. It wasn't a conscious decision, but like, I don't know where I was at in my life. It was at the point still like as a dancer and you're younger and you're more like, you're a vessel kind of for other people at that stage. Like you're still figuring yourself out and developing your own artistic voice, but it's very much like we're working together as a team, or this person's choreographing this for you, and you're just like learning to adapt and like be what this choreographer needs very much, like not having your own way. Photography was my way of being like, this is how I want to like bring awareness to something, or like this is how I see something. I want to like I guess kind of like manipulate this image to like bring out what I'm like trying to say, or find my own kind of way in that. But wasn't necessarily conscious, but it was like an outlet from an already like great art form, but just it felt very rigid at the time. So as I grew, it's like so did my practice, and they definitely like inform one another as well.
Yeah, because it's all kind of related, I guess. For sure. All storytelling, emotions.
Exactly.
I think like that's one of the things that I tried to branch out more into, is just not being just a dancer and not being like rigid in my practice about like I can't do any other art form. Yes. Because I think that's when I start losing inspiration. That's when my art seems to be stale and like feels not truly what I actually want to make.
100%. It's so true that like, the more expansive, the more you open you can be, the more like it can only like benefit whatever you're doing.
Yeah, and having that creative control to do it your way.
For sure.
Like you said with that one headshot that you had to take.
Exactly.
Like that's an important part of like figuring out what my voice is like having control of my voice.
Exactly. Yeah. And also for me, it was the huge balance, and I still find this today, because when I'm dancing, or if you're in a process, or you're just moving with people in a space, or whatever context it may be, it's very like obviously more demanding. It's more like your everything is happening right now. It's instant kind of creation, instant composition. You just have to be there, be present, moving, very physical. But with photography, or especially if I'm just like doing a self-portrait or something, it's like it's slowing down. It's a very much like it's meditative almost, because it's just me and myself, and however long I need that to be, and how really taking the time to figure things out, or just there's no deadline, there's no other people that are kind of depending on me, or guidelines or expectations, and it's very just like about the process, not necessarily to make a product, but then something does come from it. So it's interesting to like document that at a slower kind of pace from the more craziness of dance.
Exactly. It's so crazy. Like the more time I can take with something, I feel like it helps me to develop exactly what I want to do. Yeah. Whereas I do find when I'm being a vessel for someone, it has to be very improvisational. And I have to just trust my instinct in that moment. Maybe they'll hate it, maybe they won't, Yeah. So it doesn't really give me, at least at this point in my career, like I don't have like 100,000 hours to develop a character, or to like really figure out what this movement phrase is going to be, because my director doesn't have enough time to do that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So they're working with their own instincts, and then I have to be influenced by that. So like I think it's really great to hear that you found like some meditation in your
slowness.
So needed right now.
Yes.
We were just talking earlier about like the hustle and the grind, and it's just been so chaotic.
I wanted to ask you before we get into this, is like, because I'm really interested. I've asked like every artist in my or creative in my life, like what your kind of like pandemic experience was like. I mean, maybe just from like, because without getting like too personal, but just maybe from like an artistic, or like just that kind of standpoint, how it was for you.
I'd love to hear yours as well. I can kind of sum it up as to just I kept moving and I kept dancing, but I really stopped taking class, and I like stopped that consistent schedule of being in class. I mean, I had just graduated.
Of course, yeah.
So I was already having this like very set schedule of like every day I'm going to be moving.
Yes.
So then I spent like a couple months alone in my apartment, and I was just like, well, if I don't feel like moving today, I'm not going to. I also I'm the kind of person that needs to be in person when I take class.
Yeah.
Virtual classes, it depends. Sometimes they're nice, but I needed other people. Like I needed it for me. I needed it for my art. I missed being influenced by others.
Yes.
Because that's just the way my art works. I'm constantly trying to like make sure I expand out of my rigid practice of just me. So yeah, and then I think the podcast really helped me to stay with others, even though it was over Zoom most of the time.
Yeah.
That kept my inspiration like fueling me and running. But it felt like a moment where I was like, oh, am I still an artist if I'm not constantly working in art?
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to figure out what the answer is to that. But I think just having that moment to question my passion right out of school like was truly like kismet timing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was obviously very emotional and up and down.
Yeah, of course.
I was very lucky to have a lot of support from my family during it, but I think it was a moment where I was like, just stop doing what you usually do. You can go back to it if you want to.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
What you just said too, of like with this like question of like of you asked about like with your own kind of artist identity, and you said you're just trying to figure it out. Sometimes even just the question is enough. Do you know what I mean? Like that already opens up a whole other thing, and it's just like just sitting with the question or whatever that might be, not just with that.
Yes,
is kind of like, okay, I can just that is enough to just like meditate on or have that like thought with me. It doesn't need a definitive answer. You know,
it's going to change by the day, probably.
Exactly. But just that in your awareness can also like can shift and change so much.
Absolutely.
For myself, I mean, very fortunate on my end in terms of like, family and everyone's like good and stuff. The pandemic came at a very, speaking just from like a selfish, I guess, point of view, but it came at a very interesting time in my life. My sister and I were lucky enough to travel right before we did a big sister trip to Japan.
I love that.
Which was like really, really amazing and beautiful. And we were so lucky. I had finished a show with Ace, which is run by Tara Polon and Liana Bellissimo.
Totally.
That was premiered in the beginning of 2020. So just kind of finishing off a process, then like, okay, I'm done this now. Let's like go on this trip. Even as we were going to Japan, there was kind of inklings of like COVID was kind of coming up a bit, but it wasn't enough of like it's not here yet. Like we didn't know the severity of it.
Okay.
And then it was like within days of getting back, everything just shut down.
Wow.
And I was at a time in my life where it's like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do when I get back from this trip. Like I kind of was like a bit lost and just like, I don't know what my next step is. I'm just going to go on this trip, have a good time, be present and make all these memories with my sister, and then I'll figure it out. So that to like come back and then everything's just like, no one knows what they're doing. No one's going to be able to figure this out right now. It just kind of was like, it gave me this permission to like still ask those questions, but not be as like stressed about it, because I knew like, on a larger scale, everyone's going through the same thing right now.
Right.
It definitely made me feel very connected in a weird way of just like, no one is unscathed by this. Like everyone is like sharing, collectively, we're all sharing this experience.
That neutralization.
Yeah, exactly. And that felt like, oh my God, very, very surreal to be like living through this, or to have that experience in our lifetimes where like every single person is like, globally is affected by this in some way or another. Like no one is, like I said, unscathed. But it just allowed me to kind of shift my gears a bit, that's where photography kind of reemerged for me, which is something I'm bringing into this post-pandemic world. It did give me kind of a lot of time. It gave me the permission to like slow down. I said to everyone in that first year when they were like asking me, I'm like, I'm seeing spring for the first time. Like, I feel like it's been years since I've had the chance to just like watch the spring season just like bloom and just like everything just comes to life again, and just like to have more of like a slow living kind of just like observation, awareness of all this stuff was like really beautiful. And I know that in my situation I was blessed, because some people are like, okay, well, I'm like struggling here, and you're just like, oh, spring is so beautiful. But like it really it just was such a reminder to like slow down and just like take this time before, you know, you never know what's gonna come from this, but like take this time to just be here and experience all that. But we were talking a bit earlier about how now as we're re-emerging and how it's kind of getting tricky, and we were noticing that we're like kind of already slipping back in our old patterns, or just like old things are coming up, and it's like, oh man, it feels like this 2 years was a thing, but it was like this like side quest, and now we're back in this weird timeline of like just things kind of repeating. And it's sad enough, because I was just driving the other day and I was like, oh my God, the lilacs already bloomed. Like all this stuff started happening. It's like,
Spring
I missed it.
Happens.
I missed it. It's like,
I know. Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yes.
Like that was my reminder of being like, oh wow. Like how can you implement the kind of the slowness, or the taking time and the appreciation and all this stuff of like slower pace living, and then incorporate it into this more hustle and bustle that's now kind of emerging. Because I don't know if, speaking from your point of view, but it feels very much like yes, like opportunities, I want to do them. I want to see all these people, I want to do all this stuff. Sometimes very busy,
double booking myself.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like
for no reason.
yeah, exactly. So it's like
no,
I like this like eagerness, this urgency, but it's also like already feeling burnt out is not a good thing, right?
Oh my gosh,
so it's like how to find that balance, or like the stuff that we were able to discover, the questions you were able to ask in the stillness and the slowness, like how can we find a better way to like have both of these exist? Taking the time more. Then when also we're rejuvenating and replenishing, so that when we are ready to go, we're feeling it. We're not feeling like just constantly exhausting our energy all the time.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with everything that you just said. It's like, it's so funny that when the reopening happened, I was like, I'm never going to go back to the way I was. And I was like, I've learned so much over these last 2 years. I will not let capitalism destroy me. And then literally like a week in, I was like overtired, burnt out, didn't have enough time to like properly eat or whatever. Like it was truly one of those moments where I was like, can I hold myself accountable to what I had promised myself during quarantine, during the times when I would literally just sit and look at the sunset for 2 hours.
Exactly. And that's not even like I'm finding it, maybe you are as well. It's like not even just for like, these opportunities or these things. It's like even just with like friends and social situations, because it's just like, I've been craving that for this last little while. But it's also like, the reminder of like your friends there's still going to be stuff. There'll still be events. There'll still be concerts and parties. But like, just you can also say no to a few things and just, check in with yourself, honor, that peace that you found when everything was kind of settled and more quiet.
I think it's a really interesting time to be an artist or a live performer, maker of live things, because I think possibly there's the public of people who are non-artists want to come and see live things again. So I'm like trying to jump on that train. Exactly. Of being like, okay, I have to be in this show and this show and this show, because after next year, no one's going to come back and watch it. Yeah, exactly. Like riding this, and I think that's also a lot where this comes from, is that we're just trying to ride this high. Like I remember when we reconnected doing the Grim Night, I think one of the first things is like, it's so amazing that we're like back in it's going to be live theater. Like that, overexcitement. Yeah, but everyone's feeling it. And there is this new sense of gratitude, which is amazing, because maybe some people, like myself included, just like needed that check. Especially if you're used to it, you're like in and out. You're just finishing school, like okay. But then to be like when it's taken away from you, and then just like getting the chance again after all this time, and the audience feels so much more like engaged, and there's just this buzz. Yes. So that's like really, really beautiful. Like, but I agree, it's just this kind of thing is like, well, will this go away? Like this scarcity kind of mindset of like, are people still going to be this excited 2 years time when things are even more kind of back to normal? It's hard to tell where we're heading. Especially with this like hybrid of like work from home, work in the office.
Yeah.
Some people are like still doing the exact same thing that they did on the first day of quarantine, which is like baffling to me because I've been through so many changes and transformations in the way I work over the past years. But like a 9-to-5-er is still like putting up their laptop for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
So are those people, pulling away from live things and like because they've only known this thing for 2 years now and are just stuck in it?
Yeah, that's like an interesting question.
Because I want to make art for everyone. I don't want to make it just for artists or like just for the 5 people that always come and see my things, like my family and stuff. But I'm also aware of the fact that everything is so much more digital now. Yeah. It's that virtual alternate reality like desire because we only had our laptops to use, or
exactly.
Like you were just talking earlier about like film and like everything had to be a film.
Yeah, exactly.
So does that mean that it still has to be now? And like, yeah.
Yeah, that is a very interesting question to ask. What you said great at the beginning, just a very interesting time to be an artist.
Yeah.
Because like I feel like we're all kind of figuring it out in real time of just like, yeah.
We're like, what's going on? I guess we're doing this. Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. That neutralization though of like everyone, in March 2020 stopping and slowing down, or at least hopefully everyone was able to do that. I think that's so informative about how we do move forward.
Yeah.
Safely and taking care of each other and making, art feel much more inclusive.
Yes.
I think that's something I'm trying to like focus on more. But, back to like creative control, like I think whatever I make, like I'm the spearheader of it.
Yeah.
So, if I'm not being a vessel. So what do I actually want to say? Like, what have I learned or what can I bring from this quarantine life that we've been through that isn't just me being like, well, now I get to make art.
Yeah.
Come and watch me do, like, 17 pirouettes. Like, is that actually what I want to say?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe not. I don't know.
Interesting. I've had those thoughts as well. And also just with touching on what you're saying of, like, as we're kind of coming out of it, or it's, like, almost this, for me, it's this, like, urgency or this like desire to really collaborate as well, because like we all kind of had this time to figure things out, and then it feels like it's something I didn't really take advantage of before. Like it just gave me a whole new perspective of like I have so many incredible artist friends from many different disciplines, and why have we not ever kind of come together to like do something?
Yes.
Even if it's just process based and just kind of like being in that space and just like, feeling our ways out creatively. But it's just like, we're able to connect in person. So like, let's reconnect in person as people, but also like share this artistic language and this exchange together as well.
Absolutely.
Which kind of is like, I guess wanted to segue into like, well, you're working on this new show, Phantasmagoria, and just how is that?
I was going to segue.
Sorry. But I just think that's like interesting for you now being in this process. Yes. And it does feel like, from what I've understood, just like with talking with the both of you, it's like, it feels like it's very much a collaborative kind of process, and you're really allowing the cast to their own experiences really be influenced by the movement and what you're creating. So I would just love to hear more on that and how that's been from you coming out of obviously not putting on a show or something like this for a while.
Well, thank you for prompting it.
No problem.
I was about to bring up one of your projects, but yes, I think you're right. Collaboration is like such a necessity right now, because I've also been through a lot of alone time, and I didn't love that. So I'm like trying to make sure that I do talk to others and be with others. Tavia, Christina, and I are co-producing a show with Near and Far Projects in the summer, like you mentioned, and it's an original show. So we're truly like, hey cast, what can we do here? Like, please help us, because we don't have any set choreography. We don't have anything set except that the show is called Phantasmagoria. And I've stepped back from being a performer, which is so new to me. But it does allow me to have that like control, or that like those choices to be made. Which I'm very grateful for, that opportunity. But it has taught me a lot about like, I need to know what I'm saying. I need to be very clear about what my vision is. and work with Tavia to find something that can be worth seeing. Like, truly, like, it's not just about, oh, we're going to be in the Fringe. Like, there's 100 other companies. What can we do with our time?
Yeah.
So, it's been a lot of just trusting my gut. And maybe I'll end up hating it, and that would suck, but at least my performers will get paid, and that's all good.
And I mean, I'm sure you will not end up hating it, but even that, like, or just this process is such a lesson that's gonna, like, I'm sure you've already learned so much from this experience of, like, stepping back and just, like, having to be put in the, like, well, these people are now in a way, like, I guess me being the kind of director or, like, person who's facilitating or suggesting things for the movers to, like, interpret. Yeah. It's like, I have to be clear with what I'm saying. Like, I have to
be on my shit.
Yeah, I have to trust my gut and have conviction with what I'm saying. Absolutely. And, like, but I feel like you're doing it in a very, like, safe and very, like, embraced kind of energy. Like, it feels like the people you're working with and Tavia as well, it's like there's no better place to, like, experiment with that and try out.
It's a really great cast.
Yeah.
I feel very grateful that they all applied. And I think that's
super awesome.
Thank you. Tell me a little bit more about the short film that you're producing with Annie.
Oh, yes.
Annie Lujan.
Yes, right? Annie Lujan. She's my best friend, lifelong best friend.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, we've been and that's another thing too. It's like we've never worked together.
Oh,
and
wow. But you've known each other for so long.
Yes. And she's in the theater realm, theater, clown, comedy, immersive theater as well. Jack of all trades.
The best.
And she's just very lucky enough that herself and her partner Jordan, during pandemic times, they were living in Toronto, and at the beginning of the 2020, I think when their lease was going to be up, they kind of were like, well, we don't know what's kind of happening this year. We both are kind of able to work remote. He just recently graduated from the journalism program at Toronto Metropolitan University.
Gotcha.
So they were like, let's just get out of the city, live our Hallmark life, and maybe, like, we'll look at places around. They found one in Prince Edward County in Picton.
So different from Toronto.
Yes, so different. 2 hours east for maybe those listening who aren't sure geographically. I had to look it up when you mentioned it. And it's around 2 hours, because I guess the Airbnb hospitality industry got hit so hard. Like, they were able to work out a good deal with this, I guess, lady who rented for them, like, monthly instead of just, like, weekends or whatever you rent for Airbnb. So they stayed there for a good chunk of time in the fall, just living this very, like, slow, different change of pace life, which I'm guessing you haven't been out to Prince Edward County, but it's really special, really beautiful. A lot of wineries, really just different feel. It's really beautiful. Like, I really, really loved it. And they did as well, too. I went to visit them a few times. And Jordan has some family out there who own a sheep farm called Wapoos Sheep. Or I don't know if that's the official name, but they do own a sheep farm. They're very known in the area.
Okay.
And Annie got a job working at a winery, so it just felt so like very Hallmark. Just like she works at the winery, he's just working on the farm with the sheep.
The simple life.
Yeah, exactly. Which I was like here for, especially just their transition out of city life. And she's obviously like still very involved in the arts and would come back and stuff like that, and is doing all these projects now.
Yes.
But
Annie was the dramaturge for A Grim Night.
Yes, exactly. Our first time working together officially, both in like kind of different realms, but it was really cool. We're building some like witch tent in the corner, putting blood on. I'm like, I love that, like, this is our first like professional thing together. This is amazing. But they had the opportunity to come back in the summer, because in the summer is when like all of these sheeps give birth to these lambs. Okay. So all these females get moved onto a barge, like over to this little island that's just off the mainland with like a few kind of.
I'm getting right now.
Yeah, I know, it's so crazy. Like, I'm just like, this is amazing that I have friends that I'm able to have this experience with. But so they've been living there kind of since May. I mean, Annie will commute back here and there. She still is like has a lot of projects and things going on. But they're just taking care of these sheep. There's around like 2,000, and they're all starting to like give birth now to these sweet little baby lambs who are just running around. It just feels like so fairy tale.
Wow.
I'm actually from here. I'm going there because it's Annie's birthday next week. So like we're all heading up for like a little birthday celebration. So I'll probably be taking a ton of photos and trying to hold these little precious animals. But we just thought this feels like extremely once in a lifetime kind of thing. Like we have access, or you guys have access to this really, really remote but very spacious island that has kind of everything elemental that we'd be interested in, like these forests, creeks, ponds, like lake, all these things. Yeah. This really like old bones of the beautiful kind of like Victorian historical homes, and just all these sheep in the background. Like, we have to do something.
Totally, yeah.
And it kind of became the like, yeah, like we should, but then we're like, no, but we actually should. Like, let's actually like put our money where our mouth is, kind of thing. So we've applied to a few different grants and stuff. We've yet to hear back, but either way, we still plan to go through with this. Right. And just having these ideas of, we kind of have like a few different things, so it's just for us to sit down and talk about of like the finalization of where we kind of want to go with this, but kind of involving this, bringing kind of the wine element into that as well, and just set with like basically like an all-female cast. Amazing. Just she kind of has drafted a script, which is really interesting. We want to make it kind of relatable, almost like millennial, just like, you know, the classic like girls' wine trip or like bachelorette party weekend, but give it this kind of like interesting spin on it, kind of like talking about how like females, I mean, kind of going with this binary here, but like just that more like female energy of just like this kind of how confrontation is handled and kind of this kind of underlying rage and kind of miscommunication and how that kind of comes out. Yes. But in a kind of like surreal, lighthearted way as opposed to like a thriller. But just having that kind of elements, because what I'm drawn to most in my kind of style of filmmaking that I really, really love has a kind of moody, ambient, surreal element to it. So we're going to try to find that kind of sweet spot between like, wait, is this gonna go south? Oh, no, it's actually not. It's just like this girl being dumb, or like, oh, but wait. Like, you don't really know kind of thing, but
keeping everyone on the edge of their
seat.
Yeah,
exactly, but still very fun, and definitely kind of touching on like these surreal elements. Also, just with all these sheep running around, it feels like the story's just writing itself in that way.
Yeah. Just having that background image of like a full herd of 2,000 sheep. That's so
2,000, and that's like insane. Without the lambs even there. It's like there's 2,000 that like made it onto the island.
That's actually insane. Wow.
Yeah, really crazy.
So multi-genre, like definitely not just one vision, I guess. Because you're talking to me about like all of these story arcs that change kind of throughout the film.
Yeah. So I think it's us just kind of like trying to sit together and kind of finalize things, because we even have been talking with a filmmaker. She's based in Montreal. Okay. I'm just gonna think for a second there. But we tried to like ask around a little bit just to get a bit of guidance or like mentorship, and people were saying like, you do have really good ideas, but just have to like kind of hone it down a little bit, because we do want to kind of make it, we want to bridge this kind of me being interested in like visual language and filmmaking, and then her having this like this drama, this theater kind of element, but also like incorporating like this movement language or dance in there as a bit as well. Wow. We're just trying to find a way to kind of blend it and make it work, because I was very interested in what kind of like for me was like, oh, I think this would be really cool to see in a performance space, was Annie letting me know, working at a winery, just getting all this inside tips of how kind of ritualistic and how sacred just like the process, or for people that are like training to become sommeliers, it's like how intense it can be. And it almost like she just explained to me these situations, but like, or not situations, the kind of things that people like do that like are sensory involving. Okay. And just as she's explaining it, it just looked so like gestural, but like very interesting. And I was like, it kind of reminded me of the Decadence piece from the Ohad one, where they're all in
the semicircle.
Yes.
Not -13.
I'm trying to remember it, but yes, hopefully the listeners know. Yes. But just how it's like kind of like it's repetitive, but like, and then it kind of gets a bit more trance-like, and then it like explosive. Yes. And it just immediately like all this imagery was conjured. Just seeing this and just how like these men or these people who aren't realizing it, but it's so performative, and it's such this this event. Yes. It's really, really cool to how the swirling, the sniffing, that you can do all these things to like how you move your head and how the saliva falls can determine like the tannins or the dryness of the wine, just all these really interesting things. And I thought that is very, very cool. Yeah. So regardless, that will get incorporated into it. And then just that can be kind of the movement language that happens. But a lot of things to kind of like condense down, but like it's better to like have too many things to then like, okay, let's hone in on one, which is where collaborative really comes in handy for me, because if I'm left to my own devices, I could not settle on one thing.
Yeah, same.
So that's what I'm really excited to like be working with someone who I love and trust and like admire so much, so that we can find this common ground and both bring in our own influence as opposed to like just one thing, because I'm very used to working completely by myself and doing everything. So that's kind of what you were saying when you took a step back.
Absolutely.
Doing the show, it's kind of like, oh wow, this is interesting to just like take on this. Not one, there's still a lot of roles within what you're doing, but just like I'm not also performing in it and then just trying to be an outside eye and trying to co-produce it. Like it's just I can focus in on one thing.
Yes.
Which like will be something I'm very much looking forward to doing. It's like, oh wait, I don't have to be like the editor in something behind the camera also doing this, like just too chaotic.
It's too much.
Too chaotic. Yeah.
It's too much, and the art will suffer for it.
Yes.
In some ways.
Yes.
I mean, I don't want to generalize, but I think it is important, like you said, to have this collaboration be the forefront of it, because everyone involved puts something into it.
Yes.
It changes what the product is. It makes it more layered, more human, and not just like robotically crafted. I'm like truly like visualizing all of the images you're putting out, and I think it's really interesting that you've already settled on like, and I know you're still figuring things out.
Yeah.
But I think it's really cool that you have like your landscape. Okay.
Yes.
We have Prince Edward County. It's all there with the sheep, the movement of them, the movement of the people, the subjects, the smelling of the wine. Like there's so many senses already that I'm like picking up on. That I think, keep going with it, because I feel like there's it truly is a clear example in my eye about like what is needed right now. And it seems like an art that is like you said, one of a kind experience.
Yeah.
Capturing and documenting that, it feels very necessary.
For sure.
From what I'm hearing.
Thank you so much for saying that. It's cool too. And it's like something that I was, like even for my own photography practice, if I'm going out, regardless if I'm shooting other individuals or just like myself, if I'm like conceptualizing a self-portrait or anything, it's like the landscape always comes first. Like that for me is the most informative. Okay. And then it's like I adapt to what the landscape is already like giving me, either visually, sensory, like emotionally, whatever that is. So already that we have so much to work with, and that all these clear ideas are coming, but there also like will be a balance of like, okay, we have a shot list, or we know what we want to get. Like, I think that's like where a hybrid, also collaborative way comes in, which we've talked about a little bit too. We're kind of on the same page of like, let's have like a structure, but we also know that we have to have, like, not have to, but there will be like freedom in that. Like there's some things you can't plan for. There's some things that you want to like just have the opportunity to like stay open and experimental and curious, which will come in the moment.
Absolutely.
But then, already like so much is really set the stage for us to work with, so that like, it feels like it'll just come really easily. Like, oh, there's a sheep, run, get like, come on camera, let's go. Like,
and working with animals, that's going to be fun.
Yeah,
Talk about like improv and instinct and trial and error.
Exactly, the farm life.
Yeah. That sounds so interesting. I've only got to briefly meet with Annie during a Grim Night, but I think that there's something so solid in the way that she develops character. So I think that's going to just help as well. That's so interesting that you had spoke about it. It is settled, but it's not like we have to stay in that structure. Mm-hmm. I think that's very important for the overall product being, again, like truly human and truly about like the moment and the capturing of it. It sounds like it's gonna be. Are you gonna release it to the public?
Yeah,
or is it more for festivals?
It will depend on like just how the trajectory of this or how it kind of finds its way. But I know that we've talked about it enough, and I feel like even just talking, I was not necessarily planning, like, I didn't know what I would say regarding disclosing to you on the podcast, but even just saying this is like, okay, well, it's more of a push to like, let's do this kind of thing. And
doing things means doing things.
Exactly. So
very tricky to do.
mean, we will, of course, probably release that. But we are trying to like put it in festivals as well and stuff like that. So we'll see kind of like what it takes on, but I just know that we're both passionate. We both want to make it happen. So yeah, we will make it happen.
Having that other person to like hold you accountable.
Yeah, that's really helped too. And even just like we said, we've talked with a few people and they're kind of like interested, or just talking to someone who I'm interested in collaborating to do like a score with us too. It's like the more people you kind of like tell, then it's like, oh, well, like you can't just be low key about this. Like other people are now becoming involved. So
absolutely.
It also, it holds us accountability. And like, when you hear people excited, when you tell them, it's like, oh, well, there is a desire and like a passion to want to do this.
Exactly. The team starts to grow, and then all of the layers start to grow, and it's exponentially just, it has to happen.
Exactly.
I totally feel that. And I want to just go back to about like, what you spoke about, the landscape inspiring you in your photography. Mm-hmm. I was looking through some of your portfolio today because I'm a nerd.
Oh, thank you.
And I mean, I've obviously seen a lot of it already, but I wanted to bring up a couple of images that you had taken. One was of your sister Gabby in water with a bunch of masks around.
Oh, yeah.
I think, first of all, very important image for right now in terms of climate crisis. And I think your caption had spoke a lot about like what we need to do to change the world. Mm-hmm. But I imagine that when you sat down, or like when you started to do that photo shoot or that set, did you have to add the masks to it, or were they already there?
Well, yeah, it's funny, what came from that was just like, I mean, that's a whole other crisis, is like how far I feel like we've been put back from like people trying at least to implement more of like zero waste, or just like reducing their kind of like the waste that we're just making. Yes. Mm-hmm. And then COVID obviously changed all that. Everything's single use. Like you can't bring your reusable mugs anywhere, or like just so much dependent on like this single use plastic kind of stuff, which sucks, including with masks. Like sometimes it's like if you're going into places, if you're going to the hospitals or just different things, they like, or grocery stores, they like want you to use their mask or stuff like that. And like we're trying to use the cloth, but then everyone's like, the cloth aren't the right ones, and it's like, oh god, like we can't win here kind of thing. Feels like that really was detrimental to like the little bits of progress people were trying to make with changing kind of that. And I was out one day hiking in my area where I like to go, and just the amount, sometimes I'll bring a garbage bag with me because the amount of waste and stuff that's accumulated is like horrible. But then now it's just like this new added thing of like there's masks now, like that's insane. And people are saying all these things of like, oh, cut your straps because like animals can get like their legs tied around and stuff like that. So that came from like an urgency of like, oh my gosh, I'm always taking pictures and I'm very inspired by like nature and like just like elemental kind of energy. So if I'm here in this space, but actually behind me is like 5 or 6 masks that I have to like move out of the way, I'm like, well, no, what if I kept them in? What if I made that like what I wanted to talk about? So those were like there was a glove or two, which like were single use, unfortunately, that I had to use earlier. And I thought, let me give them one more life. Like, I know I still have to be throwing them out, but like, let's use them in here. And then we cleaned everything up after, of course. But like, yeah, and my sister, I asked her, because that was one that would have been hard to take by myself. Right. Because, like, the current was moving, so we had to constantly, like, keep on bringing the masks back. I didn't want any get away, and then, I'm making a statement about, like, let's do better for the planet, and then meanwhile, like, the masks are getting littered or something. But my sister was super on board because, she shares the same, like, passion for the message. But yeah, the response to that one was, like, really interesting, too. I was very grateful for the amount of people that, like, shared it and was also, like, realizing this is a problem. Yeah. And it felt like that's what I could do at this time. Like, if I'm using my art as a way of, like, trying to share a message, it just felt like, this is, like, a good stance to make on this. And the image feels very, like, impactful in that way of, like, what I was trying to evoke from it.
And it's very clear, like, okay, yes, Gabby's in the water and there's masks around. Yeah. That it looked like she did not need to be there, but also those items did not need to be there. Like, it was very much of like a part of like adding things into a a landscape that is supposed to be natural. Yes. I think that's really interesting.
My original prompt for that for a picture was like, oh yeah, because anything with water is very hard to like click like with my clicker and then be like there. So it's better to get in from an aerial kind of angle too. Yes. So my original idea was like not even to have the mask, it was to have Gabby more just like very, kind of like ethereal in the water kind of thing. But then the mask was like another thing. And I'm like, oh no, I'm going to combine these two ideas because I think that just also with the dark waters, with the blue or white kind of colored masks kind of gives a nice like contrast.
Absolutely. Yeah. That like blue color It's like
we've come to know too well.
It's supposed to be natural and like, oh, blue, so like peaceful, and then I'm like, oh, you're killing our planet.
Yeah.
There's a contradictory like messaging that's being made where it's like the cloth masks don't work anymore, so everyone needs to buy these single-use ones. It's like we can't win because we want to stop COVID, but we also anyways. Whole other conversation. But I just wanted to point out that photo. And there was another one as well. I think it was a self-portrait of you lying down with like garbage bags on top of you.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, like the garbage bags were so pretty to look at, and I'm sure you like crafted them that way. But it was like
I did not actually.
Really?
But I just was like, that was from our walk. That's how much garbage we picked up.
That's how much garbage you picked up in a walk.
Yeah, I like was thinking, oh, it's Earth Day, like maybe like I'll do a post. I didn't feel like I needed to, like, but I mean, some people love to just be like post their vacation photos or all the places they've traveled and like, oh, I love this world. And I was just like, it wasn't really on my mind, but it was Earth Day, and I had a bag with me. My mom and I went out, and I was like, yeah, I mean, what a wonderful, beautiful world, but let's look at the underbelly of it and all this kind of like, this is on one walk in a beautiful conservation area that I love to go to. Yeah. And within like half an hour, we've accumulated 5 bags of trash. So I was just like, that should be like, yes, Earth Day, of course, let's do all this stuff, but also like, let's also let's talk about this, you know?
Yes, and like... the way that the garbage bags like framed your body, it looked like a person, like it looked like your body. And so again, it's that thing of like adding like things that are not supposed to be in the landscape there.
Yes.
Such a contrasting image to look at. Like,
thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you.
Those are all on your Instagram, which I'll of course link below, and people can check it out.
Thank you. Because my Instagram bio right now says like website under construction.
I was looking
because it's like it's still I'm trying to finish. I was trying to get out before like June, but then of course life has just been absolutely crazy.
There's no time to do anything.
Thank you for I do kind of treat my Instagram as a portfolio at the moment, so I appreciate the plug.
Yes, of course. Oh my gosh, it's such as I was scrolling, like everything isn't aesthetically like one way. I think you just have like such a great like flow about how you craft your like color schemes. Like it just feels very multidisciplinary.
Thank you. Yeah, and it goes back to just like I guess the influence over the seasons, and because so much of it is like taken outside or kind of somewhere like that.
A lot of outside shots, a lot of like stills of like fruits or vegetables mixed with like subjects and portraits. I think that's like so interesting that you don't just like focus on one kind of shot. Yeah,
and also just like, well, now with things opening back up, because so much like, and obviously through the pandemic was like myself, but that gave me a new kind of way to like interpret the kind of voice I wanted to have artistically as a photographer, and taught me a lot of new things about like my camera that I knew that, or just like photography in general, that I was excited to like bring when it was safe to shoot with other people. Cool. So that's also cool too, having the opportunity to like work one-on-one with someone. And then it's very much just like, sometimes people have an idea and I ask them like if there's something specific in mind they're looking, because obviously if they're wanting to maybe work with me and they're familiar with my work, or they want it in that kind of realm. But just kind of having this like being really influenced by like that person's energy, and then seeing kind of like what is created from them, just kind of like letting the like unspoken, even if they don't give me a mood board, let's say, but it's like, okay, well, this is like obvious immediately what is like being evoked from me of what I'm seeing in you, or just like how things can. That's why I'm finding this newfound love for shooting people coming out of the photographing, making photographs with people coming out of the pandemic, because it is such like an intimate experience to just have like, to just almost be like, I try to be there and direct a little bit, but just also just witness and observe and just capture, but without trying to like interfere too much with like letting that authentic kind of energy of however that person's feeling that day, or wherever we're choosing to shoot, because that will influence them, or what they've chosen to wear, or how the weather even is that day, like how all of these things come together in this one moment that will only exist right now, but I'm able to just be there and hopefully like let you be seen in that way, or just maybe capture you in a way that you haven't been before, kind of thing.
That's beautiful. So, that's truly like it's nice to hear that there are artists like that who are still like wanting things to be spontaneous, and not too crafted, and not too superficially made. Because I think, and of course some of your shots go on to Instagram, which is a hub of just like business ads, like too many
dark web almost.
Now it's just like anything happens on Instagram. But I think it's really important that like if artists are going to post on Instagram, that they are not feeling like they have to make it like trendy or like hashtag this is what is like super popular right now, so I'm gonna do that. I think that's really cool that you like you want to work with the person that you're shooting.
Exactly. And
rather than
exactly. But even sometimes too, for either myself or like with people, it's like sometimes, example, if I'll have like a composition, if I'm inspired by something and I bring it like, oh, this is something I'm inspired by, or like maybe we can try something like this, as that's like the jumping off point. But it always like maybe the like intention or like the feeling I had from the photo comes through, but how it always just kind of transmutes and switches a little bit, and becomes something different. But like having a reference point, but then once again meeting with this person, feeling the energy, seeing what they also bring to like, just based on like the image that I've given them, how like that information's taken from them, like already it's shifting and changing something else. So far from the original, yet I mean maybe in the same, but it's cool too that no matter what the circumstance, it's always like, well, you obviously, like, this is for you. You know, I'm just here to help capture that. But how it can just, like, how just the evolution or the transformation really, really interests me.
I can see that, too. And I think your images still feel like they're alive. Like,
thank you.
Even though they're, like, two-dimensional and flat. And especially with the movement shots, like, I think as I look at them, I can see where the movement would have gone or where it's about to go. And I think that's really indicative of like someone who is also a mover.
Yes.
That you can like find those shots.
Definitely helps.
Right? Yeah.
It's true too, because sometimes like I work with a lot of dancers, but some people are like, oh, I'm not a dancer. Like, I don't know what to do. And then, I mean, my biggest thing is making someone feel comfortable, making someone feel like safe and just like open, that there's no judgment, and I'm just here to facilitate however you're feeling or you're wanting to kind of express today. But that's for me the most interesting, is when there's non-movers and they're kind of like doubting themselves a little bit, and then once it's like giving them a prompt or giving them something of like, just imagine your body doing this, or like the wind comes and whatever the thing. And these shots are also somehow in the realm of like weird positions in nature, which feels very much like on brand to what I like. Right. But it's like, oh, this was you. Like, this was you doing this. I didn't have to like pose you and then be like, smile and look natural. Like, you came to this expression in your own way, which is like, for me, so fulfilling to see, especially with like people who don't know their body, but aren't like as familiar with just like as dancers or
they wouldn't just
artists.
Like start improv.
Exactly.
That's really neat. Where can people set up a shoot with you? Do you do it over Instagram or email?
I have my email linked in my Instagram. My website will hopefully be up by July, let's say. But
the under construction part of it is just so
relatable. Oh my god, it's
so
like
relatable.
I'm working on it. I'm like drafting, changing things every day. I'm like, girl, just gotta put it up there. But
it'll get better.
My email is linked in my Instagram bio, but you can also always send me a DM.
Perfect.
True. Hop into the DMs if you'd like.
I will be doing that. I do need an updated headshot.
Oh, of course, absolutely.
Maybe we can set up a shoot soon.
Yeah, I would absolutely love that.
Okay, great. We could do it outside, hopefully.
Yes.
No sheeps, but
no sheeps, unfortunately. But hey, we were joking about like, you guys should just like bring some of them back, or if you're doing like, if this gets into like a festival or something, like bring the sheep too. I was like,
oh my gosh, do it.
I mean, maybe little stuffed animals or something, little souvenirs.
There you go. That works. Yeah. And then they're not gonna be like peeing on you or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Audrey, this was so nice. I'm looking down at all my notes. I feel like we touched on everything. Is there anything else that you want to plug? I mean, you're also a yoga teacher as well. Like, do you have any classes coming up?
I mean, no, I do teach more like the Durham region.
Okay.
Maybe I was thinking about doing like in the summer, like some park yoga drop-ins. That'll be on my Instagram, if just like a very like $5 a class, but everyone comes, if they're just kind of like feeling that. It'll be very open of like, maybe getting some suggestions before of like, what are we feeling? Like, how's everyone's bodies? Like, do we want more of just a restorative, slow kind of class, or do we want to sweat? Do we want to like feel this power together outside in the park, wherever it is? So that's something I was maybe thinking about, but find that on the Instagram.
Perfect.
Nothing else. I just wanted to say thank you so much. As listening to your podcast, you have like a really beautiful gift of kind of matching the energy of the other person and just making them feel so comfortable. And, you're very, very good at being a podcast host. So I'm so happy I had the chance to sit down and speak with you. This was really amazing.
That's so thank you so much. Of you to say. You've been such a great guest.
Thank you.
With so much in your palette and so much thought that you put into your practice, it's just been such a pleasure to like see where you come from and where your influences are. And
thank you. Well, likewise.
I'm so glad we documented it.
Yes, me too. Oh my gosh, I just remember like this thing's recording. Wow.
This is a microphone. Okay, great. So I'll plug all of that into the description. Thank you so much, Audrey.
Thank you so much. Yeah, have a great rest of your day.
You too. I'll see you in 1 second.
Exactly. Bye now.
Thank you so much for listening to the Artversations podcast. Please help the podcast community continue to grow by clicking subscribe or follow on your podcast platform and leave a review. As well, follow the podcast on Instagram at ArtversationsPod. You'll find photos of the guests you just heard, plus highlights and quotes from each episode. Let's keep the Artversation going. Send in a DM with your thoughts about art and any questions you might have for guests. Special thank you goes out to Jen Marquez and Maxim Bartnowski for their contributions. And thank you, listener. Till next time.